Hello everyone. Today we will be looking into how to integrate our chatbot to a third-party API. In this case, we will be collecting customer's name, customer's email, and sending this data to our Airtable. Now, to do that, we will be exploring two ways. So one way is to directly integrating with the Airtable API and sending data through that API. And the other way is to send data to Airtables via Make integration. And I'll show you how to do it both ways. So let's start. In here, we have a very simple setup. So we greet our customer, we get his name, we get his email, and once that is done, we want to send this data via Airtable's API to the Airtable. And once the data is sent, saved in there, we just say goodbye to the customer. So let's do just that. So the very first thing that we will need to do is to find our API key, because that will be needed for integrating with the Airtable. So, and also we will need the actual API, how to communicate with the Airtable. Okay, so first let's create the token. Let's say Voiceflow demo. And for this, we will need write scope. So as we will be writing data to the Airtable, we need a write scope, and we also need to grant access to our leads base, where our table with the customer name and emails will be. So once that is done, we will create a token, and you should copy this token and save it, because you will not be able to view it in the future. And if you forget it, you will need to generate a totally new API key. Okay, so we have the API key. Where do we use it? Firstly, I already have some headers set up, but I'll show you why it's done this way it's done. But basically, you will need to paste your API key into this authorization header, and the header starts with bearer space and then your API key. So now we will also need to look into what is the actual URL to the API. So let's see what we will want to do. And as you can see, we are in the Airtable API reference. So we will need to find create records, as we will be creating record. And we can see that this is the URL into which we need to send a request. And if we look on the right, we can see how the request should look like. It's an example. And in here, you can see that we need to send the authorization header, and the value for this header should be bearer space and your token. And we just done that. So we have the authorization header, we have our token. Now the other thing, and it's important, is to add the content type, and the content type needs to be application JSON. And we can see we also have this content type header, and the value is application JSON. Now, okay, so we will not need these ones. So now the URL. So this is the URL into which we will need to post the requests. And take note that request type needs to be post. And in here it says that we need to pass the base ID. So the base ID will be the very first entry in our path. So if you go to your table into which you want to save the data, the very first entry in the URL will be your base ID. Now, so let's replace this base ID with the actual ID. Now, the other one, as you can see, we need table ID or table name. Again, we will use the table ID, so it's the second parameter in the path. So paste the table ID. And then, as you can see, there are ways how to send the records. You can send it as a single record, as I'm doing in here. So basically, if you have an object and that object has fields, so we have name and email, these are the actual columns in our table, name and an email. And we will set the values that we collected from our customer. But as you can see, you can also send, instead of one record, if you have an actual use case, you can send multiple of records. In that case, you just send them as records, as an array of records. But in our case, it's just as simple as that. And once we've done this, we should be able to send information to the Airtable, and we can try to run tests and see if everything works. So what's your name? It's John. So it seems that it worked, and we can check, and we see that we have a new record in our table. So that's how you integrate with the Airtable API directly. So the other way how we can integrate is by using make. So in this case, instead of sending the request to the Airtables directly, we will be using make scenario to send request to the make endpoint, and make will send the request to the Airtables, and we will have our entry in the Airtable. So for that, we will create a new scenario, and in this case, we will need to find webhook. So we will be using custom webhook, and for that, we will create a new webhook vs Voiceflow demo 2. And we don't need to set any IP restrictions or anything like that. So the way it is, it's good enough. So now we can see we have this URL at the bottom. We just copy that and paste it to our API step. We need to also make sure that we will be sending post request, not a get request, not a put request, but post request. And as with the Airtables, we need to set the content type to application JSON. The body part is the same we had for the Airtable request. And in this case, we don't need any API keys or anything like that. So that's done. We can go to the, well, in fact, because this is already done, we can send a first request. As you can see, like this is for now listening for incoming requests. And we will do just that. say John. So the request was sent to make, and in here you can see that successfully determined. What that actually means is that a webhook received a request, and now we should be able to see the requests structure. So the next thing that we need to do is find Airtable. So Airtable, and we will be creating records. So we will be creating records. We will add a connection type. So it can be either token or OAuth. The easier one is the OAuth. You just select, basically you just grant the access via user interface instead of going and creating the token. Okay, so I guess we will need to try again, as my browser just blocked that pop-up. Okay, so add the connection of with demo 2. Okay, and as you can see in here, we are granting access to read records, read structure of your base, like table names, fields, and also granting access to write records or edit records. And we grant this access to leads base. So this connection will only be able to do changes for this base. And in this base, we only have one table, and we have like these columns. And as you can see, like previously, because we sent request from our chatbot to the make, in here we already see what kind of fields the webhook expects to receive, and we can do the easy mapping. So basically just clicking. So we want the name field from the incoming request to the webhook to be mapped to the name column in our Airtable, and the email to the email column. And that is pretty much it. And the next thing that is nice to do is do the response. So for the response, you can say 200, and you can choose to return the actual response, and you can build it from the Airtable data, or you can do nothing and just return a 200 response. That means that everything went well. So to test it, let's run it once. So the webhook is listening. You can see in our Airtable, we only have one entry. And now we will run our chatbot again. Say John at make.com. And if everything goes well, make should have received the request. It created a record in the Airtables, and it returned the response. We can see everything is green, and we can see that we have this record in our Airtables. So everything went as expected. The only thing that you need to do to make this work anytime your chatbot sends request to this webhook is to turn on this scenario. And we can see on and it's listening, and we should be able to test again and create one more record. And we can see the record was created successful. So why would you want to do integration via Make when you can actually integrate directly to the Airtable? So why would you want to use some kind of additional service on top of the Airtables? And if you only want to save the data which you collected from your customer into the Airtable, for sure you can do the direct integration via Airtable API. But in case if you want to do something more advanced, more automation, you might want to use Make, because not only can you, for example, create the record in the Airtable, you could potentially do thing like sending an email. So you could send an email. So instead of directly connecting, directly giving the response, you could, after the record was created, send an email that basically informs the lead, okay, we received your email, we received your contact information. Now, please fill in this form before our scheduled demo or something like that. Well, there are many possibilities. So if you only need to integrate directly and you only need to save the records, I think there is no need for you to use Make. But if you want to do something more advanced, for sure you can use Make, and it will help you a lot. And that's it for today. See you next time.